So I read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. It's a dark academia murder mystery set at Cambridge. It sounded very intriguing when I picked it up in Indigo, but from the length of this, I'm sure you can guess that I didn't very much enjoy it. I started rolling my eyes at about page 9, and now I have quite a bit to say about it. So please allow me to ramble on about failed themes and pretend intellectualism. So the book starts with a prologue of our main character, Mariana, saying that she knows Professor Fosca is a murderer and she is going to catch him. That's how it starts. That's the premise we are presented with up front. I immediately assumed that this was incorrect, but was kinda hoping that I was wrong. I think a murder mystery where, from the beginning, the main character knows who did it, but just is struggling the entire time to find hard evidence, would be interesting. But I'll tell you right now that my initial instinct that the main character was wrong about this was correct. So Mariana is a new widow. Her husband, Sebastian, died over a year ago, and she's still pretty broken up about it. Mariana also runs group therapy sessions out of her house. She is a psychotherapist, and the narrative is going to do its absolute best to convince us that this makes her uniquely qualified to solve this crime. She's not. One of the members of her group is stalking her. His name is Henry. He watches her house from across the street, and he has violent outbursts. He stays behind after the group session, shows her the crosses he's carved into his chest, still bloody, and here is where the main character lost me, because instead of being rightfully horrified or professionally concerned, she demurely thinks, I really should tell him to leave. I shouldn't be thinking like this. Girl, what the fuck? Call the cops. While she's having this confrontation with Henry, she gets a call from Zoe. Who is Zoe? The narrative doesn't tell us, not for 20 more pages. In that time, the narrative waffles on about how Zoe is like a daughter. She's almost a surrogate daughter. What does that mean? I don't know. Mariana saw Sebastian looking at Zoe with such fondness, such love, mingled with trepidation, as if he were gazing at his own child, which, in a way, he was. Page 32. So they dropped her off at university like proud parents, but why? Who is Zoe? Well, 20 pages after she's introduced, we do find out. Zoe is Mariana's niece, the daughter of her older sister. Mariana's sister and her husband died in a car crash at some time in the past, leaving Zoe an orphan, and she and Sebastian took Zoe in. Wait. Looking back at it now, Zoe's name is actually first mentioned on page 7, so in fact it takes 37 pages to find out who Zoe is to Mariana. So, Zoe, Mariana's niece, is a student at Cambridge, like Mariana before her. She calls to tell Mariana that a student has been found dead on campus, and Zoe thinks that it was probably her friend Tara. She asks Mariana to come to Cambridge. Mariana hesitates for some reason. Her character seems to be that she is a coward without her husband and terrible at problem solving, even though she's a psychotherapist. And she should probably be capable of supporting her niece through an emotionally traumatizing event, but Zoe convinces her to come despite her hesitations. Though this makes sense, because the one group session that we see her do so far sounds terrible. Henry comes in last, bringing a takeout coffee cup, and apparently one of the rules for these sessions is they can't bring in anything from outside. That seems incredibly vague and ripe for conflict in this sort of setting. So one of the other members, Liz, who Mariana explicitly finds irritating, speaks up and says it's against the rules. Everyone starts arguing, and Henry ends up throwing his cup on the floor, all while Mariana says nothing. During this, there's this whole narrative monologue about Henry being a vulnerable individual, how she doubted that she should have let him into the group, but how she also has a soft spot for him. The narration goes on saying that as long as she maintains control of the group, it can work to heal them. All while they're all ganging up on Henry and aggressively bullying him. I'm just imagining her sitting there thinking they're having a breakthrough while everyone is being further traumatized by the situation she created. And then she blames Henry for his outburst, saying he doesn't understand boundaries or when he's getting on people's nerves. Chapter 7 is written like a diary entry from, presumably, the killer, who is completely self-absorbed. They talk about how you're not the same after you kill someone. They talk about being split in two, and the part of themselves that knows their secrets is locked deep inside themselves, but is trying to escape. I'm not sure yet if this is purposefully fake deep ramblings, or if the author thinks this is actually insight into the mind of the killer. We'll find out. Mariana's narration reminisces on her time with Sebastian. She thinks about how great he was and how great he made her feel. Mariana doesn't know how beautiful she is. She explicitly needs the validation of a man, Sebastian specifically, in order to feel any self-worth. And of course, she's overly sexual for plot reasons. She suspected, if she was beautiful, it was solely because of Sebastian. Basking in the warmth of his sunlight, she blossomed like a flower. Page 34. After this, she thinks about how she used to believe she was ugly because she had to wear glasses as a teenager. But she doesn't anymore, and she never talks about wearing contacts in the present, so does she just not need them anymore, or is she going around seeing the world all blurry? That actually might explain some things that happen. So she meets a kid, who's actually in his mid-20s, Fred, on the train to Cambridge. He aggressively flirts with her and then tries to follow her on her walk to the school. This whole chapter, she keeps thinking how young he is. He's a PhD student. But also how handsome he is. She thinks that he will look good when his face grows a bit, and then he asks her out for a drink and asks for her number. Mariana declines, but Fred promises they'll meet again because he's a little psychic, and he had a premonition. It's after this that we find out how Sebastian died. They were on vacation in Greece. Sebastian went swimming during a storm and, drowned or got smashed on rocks or something. Tragic. Is it important how he died? Not really. He died, and it was an accident. Mariana runs into Julian at Cambridge. He was a student when she was, but he's now a famous forensic psychologist, and he's helping the police. She asks if the person who died was Zoe's friend Tara, and he confirms it. How very professional. He then also asks her out for a drink. You're going to start to notice a pattern here. She goes to Zoe's room and confirms to her that it was Tara who died. Zoe reveals that before she died, Tara was saying some crazy things, that she was sleeping with one of the professors, Edward Fosca, and that Tara said that he had threatened to kill her. Mariana takes her to the detective in charge of the case to tell him all of that. He then goes and talks to Fosca, while they're waiting in the office for him to come back, and says that Fosca has an alibi and that he thinks it was probably Tara's boyfriend Conrad who did it, even though Zoe said that they weren't even dating. Conrad is then arrested. As they're leaving the office, they run into Fosca. Zoe acts really nervous around him. Fosca says that he is hurt by the accusation that he might have killed Tara and explains that Tara was struggling with her studies, and he had informed her that she would need to redo the previous semester. I'm not sure why, as her advisor, he was having this conversation at the beginning of this semester or term and not at the end of the previous one, but sure. Mariana decides she's going to get involved in the case and asks Julian, the guy she went to school with who's working with the police, to get her in to talk to Conrad. Julian is doing a psych eval and is just like, of course, I can just bring you with me. Why not? Conrad said he loved Tara, would never hurt her, that her friends are weird, more on them later, and that he had scored drugs for Fosca before. He also didn't know anything about Tara potentially sleeping with Fosca. Mariana instinctively believes him because of her therapist powers. But Julian, the professional forensic psychologist, says he's seen it all before and it's an act. Of course, Mariana is ultimately proven right by the narrative. There is a memorial service for Tara that night, and Mariana goes with Zoe. Fosca enters with a group of women, all in white. These are, presumably, Tara's friends that Conrad was talking about. After the service, everyone is out in the courtyard, and Mariana and Zoe are standing apart from them. Mariana fills Zoe in on her discussions with Conrad, and Zoe says they need to do something about it, but Mariana is hesitant, saying that the police will handle it. Zoe seems on the verge of saying something when she sees Fosca and gets scared. He comes up to them and says how sorry he is. Zoe says she has to go meet some friends for a drink, and Mariana says she's going to meet Clarissa. Clarissa is also a professor at Cambridge and was Mariana's mentor when she was at school. She's described as eccentric. Pipe smoking was a habit Clarissa had picked up from her late husband. Her room smelled of smoke and spicy, pungent pipe tobacco. Over the years, the odor had seeped into the walls, into the paper in the books, and into Clarissa herself. It was overpowering at times, and Mariana knew that students in the past had objected to Clarissa smoking during supervisions, until Clarissa was eventually forced to comply with changing health and safety standards and no longer allowed to inflict her habit on her students. Page 89. But of course, Mariana is different. But Mariana didn't mind. In fact, sitting here now, she realized how much she'd missed the smell. On the rare occasions she encountered a pipe being smoked in the outside world, she would immediately feel reassured, associating the smelly, dark, billowing smoke with wisdom and learning and kindness. Page 89. Mariana and Clarissa are talking about the murder, and Mariana says how violent it was, as Tara's throat was cut and she was stabbed many times. The Greeks had a word for it, you know, for that kind of anger. Mariana was intrigued. Did they? Menace. There's no real equivalent in English. You remember, Homer begins the Iliad with, "Sing to me, O goddess, of the menace of Achilles." What does it mean, exactly? Clarissa mused for a second. I suppose the closest translation is a kind of uncontrollable anger, terrifying rage, a frenzy. Page 89 to 90. This pissed me off. I hate when someone says it's untranslatable. There's no English equivalent, because that's just not how it works. I know the author means that there's no single word that means the same thing, but Clarissa translates it as one word, frenzy, and the website where I got that Greek to be able to copy and paste it into the script just translated it as anger. I don't know Greek, but I feel like it's not actually that hard, so you're being pretentious for no reason. Mariana mourns Sebastian and quotes Tennyson. Clarissa says that her quote is from In Memoriam AHH, which at this point I had thought was going to mean something, but it doesn't really come up again, and her relationship with Sebastian doesn't mirror Tennyson's relationship with Hallam. I guess it's just that Mariana is sad that her husband is dead, and Tennyson was sad that Hallam died. Clarissa convinces Mariana to stay for a while at Cambridge and help out because a psychotherapist can easily insert herself into a murder case that has nothing to do with her. And then Clarissa loans her a copy of In Memoriam and says that it helped her when her husband died. I'm not sure how to get this across, but the way it's written feels disconnected from their earlier conversation about it. It's written like Clarissa forgot that they had already talked about it, and she just spontaneously decided to loan her this book because it had been helpful to her in a similar situation. Maybe that sounds crazy because obviously she gave it to her because she mentioned it, but it doesn't read like that. Anyway, Mariana is shown to a room. And is this a thing? It says that she stays in one of the rooms set aside for previous students. Is that a thing at Cambridge? That seems so odd from a North American perspective, but I'll accept it. Anyway, she's shown to her room by another young man, Mr. Morris, who is a porter. She asks him about Tara and her friends, and he says they are provocative, whatever that means. Now we enter part 2. There is another entry from the presumed killer here. They talk about being out for a walk and seeing God in the eyes of a fox. Then is like, I don't want to be two people, and all like, why am I afraid? Am I afraid of the police? And ends with, I know where I must look. The next morning, Mariana tells Zoe that she is going to stay for a bit and try to figure out what happened to Tara. She then goes for a walk and calls all of her clients to cancel her group therapy sessions for the week. When she calls Henry, he says he needs her and says he knows where she is. She's a little scared, but not as much as I think she should be in this situation. She then muses on the psychology of the potential killer. She assumes they are a man and that he was neglected as a child, that no one loved him, that he was a charming man, but it was all an act, and he lured Tara out to a secluded spot to kill her because she provoked him. This is crazy, wild speculation with the amount of information she has. More to my point of her being a terrible psychotherapist. Tara died yesterday. She knows her throat was cut and that she was stabbed. She might have been sleeping with her professor. How that makes her so sure that whoever did this was definitely a man who has never known love, I don't know. She then runs into Fred, the PhD student she ran into on the train. She mentions that her niece got some bad news, and Fred says, oh yeah, about that murder. Your niece is a student at St. Christopher's, the particular campus that Zoe is at. Mariana's like, how did you know that? Because she's sure she didn't tell him, and he says, yes you did. I'm not going back to check. He says he has some theories about the murders and asks her out for a drink again to discuss, and gets really excited when Mariana says yes, for some reason. Mariana then decides to ask the person who cleans Tara's room some questions. She calls her a bedder. I'm going to assume that this is a real slang term from Cambridge and just blame the British for this one and not the author. But then the author goes on for quite a bit talking about how important the bedders are, how the main character's bedder was sometimes the only person she spoke to, and that they often take on a carer role for the students. Elsie, Tara's bedder, turns out to be, if not a compulsive liar, at least she has a habit of heavily exaggerating. Elsie says that they were very close. She says that she was the last person to see Tara before she died. She saw her leave the dorms and waved, but Tara didn't see her. She also says that Tara would cry on her shoulder about her friends bullying her, and that Zoe would know more about why they were bullying her. Mariana then asks Elsie if she will let her into Tara's room to look around, and Elsie agrees. Why not? While they're in there, Elsie makes comments about Tara's parents, that Tara told her that her mom was a bitch. She also says that she used to brush Tara's hair for her, that she would have been helpless without her. On Tara's dressing table, Mariana finds a postcard of Tarquin and Lucrezia by Titian, with an ancient Greek quote written on the back. She goes to Clarissa to ask about it. Clarissa says that the quote is from The Children of Heracles by Euripides, in the most pretentious fashion, and Mariana is pretentiously embarrassed for not recognizing the quote or the play, so Clarissa quotes it directly. Ah, yes, of course, forgive me. Clarissa glanced at the postcard and translated it. Roughly speaking, it says, the oracles agree. In order to defeat the enemy and save the city, a maiden must be sacrificed, a maiden of noble birth. Through more ancient Greek, Clarissa explains that the maiden needed to be sacrificed to Persephone, which completely rattles Mariana, because she feels that Sebastian died because she angered Persephone. The day before Sebastian died, they were at a temple dedicated to Persephone, and she asked to keep him safe. And then he died. So she thinks that Persephone was angry at her for asking. Then Clarissa says that Professor Fosca taught Tara Greek tragedy, and that Mariana should ask Zoe about him because he is her director of studies. Mariana goes to lunch with Zoe. Zoe says she doesn't like any of the boys there and that she won't ever fall in love. Mariana asks about Elsie, and Zoe says that Tara hated her, that Elsie is a psycho, and that Tara had banned her from her room. Mariana asks her about the postcard and Professor Fosca. Zoe says she doesn't know anything about the postcard and just brushes off the questions about Fosca. Zoe says that Tara's friends are Professor Fosca's students, all female, and make up his fan club. He calls them the Maidens. Roll credits. They go to one of Fosca's lectures to try and meet the Maidens. The whole thing is, you guessed it, incredibly pretentious. He starts by memorializing Tara. Then he talks about the concept of liminal in Greek tragedy as a transit between two worlds, and moves on to the underworld and the specific rituals associated with Persephone. After the lecture, they find the Maidens. Zoe tells Mariana that they are all privileged rich girls. Mariana convinces two of them to come for a drink and talk. Veronica and Serena are the two maidens who go with them. They say Tara was using Fosca, but that Fosca was with them during Tara's murder, though one says he did step out for a few minutes for a cigarette. After this, we get another insert from the killer, about them taking down a box of childhood memories. They open a journal they kept during one particular summer that they don't want to remember, but they must. Mariana finally goes to meet Fred for that drink. She has conflicted feelings about him. He says he thinks Conrad didn't do it and they should team up to solve this. He then mentions Naxos, the Greek island where Sebastian died, saying he likes to go swimming there, which again rattles Mariana. On her way back to the college, Mariana thinks she's being followed but doesn't see anyone. Outside her room is a black envelope. It's a note from Fosca asking to meet the next morning. Another passage from the killer here, they say that their birth was ominous and that when they were a child, their father threatened to kill them. Mariana goes to meet Fosca, and they go for a walk in some gardens. Neither of them really says anything to the other. Fosca even says that Mariana is really quiet and he thought she was going to interrogate him. She just shrugs. She does ask about the Maidens, and he gets angry because he says she's accusing him of being inappropriate with his students when he's not. Except now one of those girls is dead. Professor Fosca frowned. There was an unmistakable flash of anger in his eyes. He stared at her. "Do you think you can see inside my soul?" Mariana looked away, embarrassed by the question. "No, of course not. I didn't mean—" "Forget it." He took another drag of his cigarette, all anger apparently gone. "The word psychotherapist, as you know, comes from the Greek psyche, meaning soul, and therapeia, meaning healing. Are you a healer of souls? Will you heal mine?" Page 178. Then, in the narration, she says that she can tell that he's angry because of her psychotherapist powers, but she doesn't know why. His anger. Yes, she could feel it. He was silent now as they walked, but underneath the silence there was fury. He was disowning it, of course, but it was there, bubbling beneath the surface. Somehow, Mariana had angered him during this meeting. Page 179. Somehow? She accused him of having inappropriate sexual relationships with his students. Whether or not he's doing that, he would be angry at her bringing that up. He asks her to come to his rooms for dinner that night, and she agrees. He then kisses her and leaves. Then, for some reason, she calls Fred. He shows up like a lost little puppy. I absolutely hate it when I think, why is this character doing this? And then the character is like, I don't know why I'm doing this. because that is exactly what happens here. She has no idea why she called Fred, but she did, and she just tells him everything she knows up until now. She takes him over to the dorms, and they stand outside of Tara's room. They talk about how there is 15 minutes between when Elsie saw Tara leave her room and when the porter saw her leave the gate, when that only should have taken a couple of minutes. Mariana then finds a cigarette butt on the ground that is from an American brand, and it can only belong to Fosca, because he's American, and she saw him smoking American cigarettes before. Zoe then calls to tell Mariana that someone else has been killed. Part 3. The body was found in a field nearby, and Mariana and Fred go there right away. The police still have the area cordoned off, but Mariana gets Fred to distract the cops so she can slip through. Why? Why does a psychotherapist need to see the crime scene? Why does she need to see the body? She doesn't. She just needs to see who was killed. Veronica, another one of the Maidens, and one of the ones she just spoke to. She also needs to tell the chief inspector who Veronica is and who she thinks killed her, Fosca. She also needs to find out that both Veronica and Tara were found with a pine cone in their hands. This timid therapist, who wasn't sure she even wanted to be near this mess, is only days later now distracting cops to invade a crime scene. Her potentially contaminating this crime scene was all so that she could learn some surface-level information that Julian probably would have told her anyway. Apparently, this also means that Conrad is no longer a suspect for Tara's murder because he was in custody when Veronica was killed, and it was obviously the same person that killed Tara. Not how that works, but okay. Julian, the forensic psychologist, has been there this whole time, and he asks her out for dinner that night. She says she can't because she already has plans with Fosca, but doesn't tell Julian that. Julian sees Fred waving to her from behind the police cordon and assumes she's actually getting with him and sulks off. There's this weird thread through the whole book where every man Mariana runs into wants to get in her pants. Except for the chief inspector, who is explicitly brown. Let's not get into why that might be. But she is just so confused by her own feelings towards all of them. She says she doesn't like Fred, but she keeps calling him. She thinks Fosca is a murderer, but Zoe thinks Mariana is into him because of her clear obsession with him. And Julian? Well, Julian is there. Veronica was the daughter of a U.S. senator, so now there's a bunch of news crews swarming the school. We get another insert from the killer here, mostly just whining about their abusive father and wondering why their mother never left him. But it's here that they also gender themselves as male for the first time. So far, during Mariana's narration, everyone has been automatically assuming that the killer is a man, and that makes sense because it usually is. But my theory before this insert was that it was actually a woman, because no one had even brought up the possibility that it wasn't a man, and I thought that it was probably Zoe, because she was the only woman that it would make sense to be. But in this bit written by the presumed killer, they just say that they're a man, so I guess the author knew that it was a man, so all of the characters also knew it was a man without any evidence. Anyway, Veronica was last seen leaving the theater because she was rehearsing for a play. Mariana sneaks in through the fire escape. She hears banging from the stage and runs into the play's director. A young, sweaty, shirtless man who is violently demolishing the set. He's angry that his play that he worked so hard on is now cancelled. Because he's missing one of the actors and didn't have any understudies? Sure. He's not sad or concerned at all that 2 students have been killed in only a few days. He says Veronica was a terrible actress and didn't like when he gave her corrections, and also that he thinks she went to meet with the professor that night. Mariana goes into the dressing room and finds another postcard with an ancient Greek quote on the back. Mariana and Zoe go to lunch with Clarissa. Clarissa says the image on the postcard is of St. Lucy, patron saint of the blind, who had her eyes plucked out and was stabbed in the neck. The quote is about a woman being led to her death and having her throat slit, which is how Veronica was killed. Zoe says that sending postcards is something that Fosca would do. After that, Mariana and Zoe go to the college bar where they run into Serena, the other maiden that Mariana had questioned before. She absolutely bombards Serena. Reminder that her friend was just found dead that morning, asking her if she can get her a drink, asking her if she's texting a secret admirer, and Serena rightfully blows up at her, asking her why she has it out for the professor. Serena says she knows it was Mariana who told the cops to question Fosca, and Mariana is quietly smug that the chief inspector listened to her. Serena also says that Fosca was with her when Veronica was killed, and Mariana should, rightfully, fuck off. And I would agree with her. That night, Mariana goes to Fosca's rooms for dinner. Even though she's sure he's killed 2 people in some sort of ritual sacrifice to ancient Greek gods, she's a little turned on by it. Her intuition told her that whoever had sent those postcards to these girls also killed them. While that might seem an irrational leap, even delusional to a man like Chief Inspector Singha, for a therapist like Mariana, her intuition was often all she had to go on. Anyway, he's dressed really fancy and calls her beautiful. There is also a pine cone ominously sitting on the coffee table, like the ones found with the 2 dead girls. Mariana notices it, and Fosca offers it to her, and she declines. They move to the dining room to eat, and there's this. Mariana looked at the plate in front of her. The slices of razor-thin lamb were so rare, so raw, that a shiny red puddle of blood was oozing out and spreading across the white china plate. She felt sick looking at it. Page 229. Well, that's just not how that works. The red liquid that comes out of prepared meat isn't blood, it's just meat juice. It's not blood. And she goes on about the blood on her plate and how disgusted she is by it, and it just bugged me so much. The author acts so smart about so many things but gets this simple thing wrong. You could even fix this by saying that it looked like blood, that it reminded her of blood, and because of the recent murders she felt sick. But nope, we're just wrong about meat. They make small talk, talking about both of their sad childhoods, but honestly don't really say much. Again, Fosca says that his father abused his mother, which is to maybe clue the reader in that he's the author of those inserts that were written supposedly by the killer. But we're told that this conversation is incredibly intellectual. He appraised Mariana for a moment, thinking. She could see his mind turning. He had a truly brilliant mind, she thought, sharp as a knife. She'd have to be careful. Page 231. And then he praises her for her psychotherapist powers. You have a way of getting things out of people, Mariana. You're a good therapist, I can tell. Despite my intention not to reveal myself to you, you have ended up getting me on your couch, he smiled, therapeutically speaking. No, she's not. No, she didn't. She barely did anything. Barely even asked about his childhood. There wasn't even anything in the narration suggesting that she was purposefully not saying very much in some sort of mind play. But as far as the prose is concerned, Mariana has very little going on in her head. He's praising her for nothing, and even that isn't purposeful. Maybe if Mariana's narration acknowledged that he was being overly complimentary, that might have been something, but still, her inner narration is rather quiet. He says that the cops talked to him and asked why she has it out for him. She says she doesn't. She does. He says that they're the same, and she is immediately rattled and vehemently denies it. He then speculates on what the killer might be like. He says that these killings are a sort of ritual, and that the killer is showing off to entertain. Mariana is more convinced than ever that it was him who did it. They go back out to the living room, and Mariana finds a book of works by Euripides with the quote that was on Veronica's postcard bookmarked and underlined. And even though we've already seen this ancient Greek quote and had it translated, the author inserts the whole thing in Greek again, fully interrupting the reading experience. Part 4. Another insert from The Killer, where they tell the story of their father shooting and killing their beloved dog and having to watch it die. Sure. Mariana leaves Fosca's, and she is pretty shaken up and needs to talk to someone. Who does she call? Her close friend Clarissa, who's been helping her? No. Julian, who has been sneaking her into crime scenes and wants to solve this? No. She calls Fred, a clumsy kid who she's just met. They go and get some chips, fries, per my fellow North Americans, and she catches him up. He thinks she's definitely right and not crazy at all, even though Fosca has an alibi for both murders. The Maidens, Veronica and Serena, could have been lying, or he could have an accomplice. Later, Mariana gets a phone call. A man's voice says that they can see her. Mariana is sure that it is Henry. The next day, she gets up to go to London to visit her psychiatry supervisor to get some insight. But before she leaves, she sees Fosca talking to Morris, the porter. Fosca hands him an envelope, and Mariana follows Morris to a cemetery where she sees him meet up with Serena, and she watches them have sex in the cemetery. Of course, she steps on a twig, and Morris confronts her, threatening her, and she leaves, finally going to London. On the train, she feels like she's being followed, but doesn't see anyone watching her. In London, she meets with Ruth, her supervisor, and Ruth suggests she have a group therapy session with the Maidens, because of course that's the solution. She also suggests that Mariana's obsession with Fosca has to do with her daddy issues. When she gets back, she feels the desire to call Fred, for some reason, but she shrugs that off and then goes to her room. The door is slightly ajar when she gets there, and when she opens it, she sees that it has been ransacked. She calls Morris, even though he had just threatened her, and gets him to find the cops. They ask if anything was stolen. She says no. Then she sees a cross carved into the desk and tells the cops she isn't going to pursue charges. She's pretty sure it was Henry who did this. Why would that mean you're not pressing charges, considering his incredibly concerning behavior? I don't know. Next, we have another killer insert. He says that when he was 12, his mother told him she was going to leave his father, but wasn't taking him with her. He feels betrayed and fantasizes killing her. The next morning, Mariana, Zoe, and Clarissa are having breakfast in the hall, and Fosca comes in. Mariana asks him to convince the Maidens to come to a group therapy session with her. He says that he will only do that if he can come too. Mariana hesitantly agrees. She has the group therapy session with the Maidens, and she sets up 2 empty chairs for Tara and Veronica, which, in my opinion, is fucking ghoulish. These girls died within the last few days, and she's setting up little memorials for their supposed friends to stare at. Anyway, the Maidens think this whole thing is stupid, and I kinda agree with them. And they also don't really seem to care that Tara and Veronica are dead. They talk about daddy issues, and Mariana says, pointedly at Fosca, that children will do anything to be loved, and some people take advantage of that. But what comes out of this is that Mariana immediately characterizes all of them as mean girls and feels afraid of them. Then, the story validates that fear by having them all tease her for not knowing that Zoe was a member of the Maidens. As Mariana is going back to her room, she runs into Fred, who invites her back to his room for a drink, and she agrees. We find out that his mom left and then died when he was young, and that he also had a dog. He acts really weird and obsessive and says he loves her and asks her to marry him. She's weirded out, rightfully, and leaves. He insists on walking her down and tries to give her a letter, but she refuses to take it. She still doesn't make it back to her room because she is confronted by Henry, who has a knife and says she sacrificed him when she canceled their therapy sessions. He is tackled by Morris before he can actually attack her, and then there's this whirlwind of a paragraph. Morris called the cops, and Henry was arrested, but Mariana insisted he needed psychiatric care, and he was taken to the hospital, where he was sectioned. He was prescribed antipsychotic medication, and Mariana arranged to speak to the consultant psychiatrist in the morning, page 310. I didn't cut anything out of that. It really is all listed in quick order like that, and we never hear about Henry again. The next morning, Elsie, Tara's better if you remember, bangs on Mariana's door, waking her up. She tells her that another body was found. Serena is dead, and that she picked up a postcard from under Mariana's door when she got there. Of course, it has a painting of a woman being sacrificed and an ancient Greek quote on the back. She goes outside and sees Fosca having a cigarette. She marches up to him and demands he translate the Greek. Of course, it says she's going to have her throat slit, and she punches him in the face repeatedly until cops pull her off. Next, she's in the dean's office with the dean, the chief inspector, and Fosca. She explains her whole theory that Fosca was sleeping with Tara. He's sleeping with all the Maidens, in fact, and Tara got jealous and threatened to tell, so he killed her. Veronica and Serena lied to give him an alibi, but changed their minds, and he killed them to silence them. Fosca, of course, denies all of this. Then, Mariana mentions that she believes that Morris is blackmailing him, and he was also sleeping with Serena. The chief inspector jumps on this and has Morris arrested. Part 5. Mariana meets with Zoe and Clarissa. Zoe says she now believes Mariana, and she also thinks Fosca killed them. Zoe says she knows where the murder weapon is. Mariana asks her how, and if it's connected to Zoe being one of the Maidens, and Zoe says she only ever went to one meeting and tells them what happened. She was taken to a little temple structure not far away. All of the Maidens and Fosca were there. She was blindfolded, and Fosca gave her a drink, which she says Tara told her later had GHB in it. He placed a knife against her throat without cutting her, as a symbolic sacrifice. She says some of the other girls were naked, but she didn't want to take her clothes off, but she ended up naked with Fosca kissing and touching her. But she ran away when he started kissing Tara. Zoe says Fosca put the knife that he held to her throat in the wall of the temple, and that this is definitely what he used to kill the girls. Zoe reveals that she also received a postcard with some ancient Greek that afternoon. She says that she and Mariana need to go to the temple to find that murder weapon so that they have evidence to take to the cops. They go back to Zoe's room so that she can get a shower first. While Zoe is in the shower, Mariana gets a call from Fred, saying that he had a premonition that she's in danger and she needs to get out of there, but Mariana dismisses him. She then sees a piece of paper sticking out of a stuffed animal in Zoe's bed. She pulls out a letter, a love letter addressed to Zoe. The chapter with this love letter transcribed is written in the same style as the previous inserts by the presumed killer, so we're supposed to assume that it was the same hand who wrote both. The writer says that they had a premonition and knew they loved Zoe as soon as they saw her. They had a plan to be with her, but it involved blood and sacrifice. The mention of a premonition is clearly meant to make us think that Fred is the one who wrote it. Mariana immediately assumes that it was written by Fosca. Mariana and Zoe go to the temple. On the way there, Mariana feels they're being followed, and when she looks back, she glimpses Fred, but doesn't tell Zoe. When they get there, Zoe easily finds the knife in the wall, and immediately turns evil, pointing it at Mariana. Twist, she's the killer, I was right. She pointed the blade directly at her. She stared at Mariana without blinking, her blue eyes radiating darkness. Page 351. Mariana reveals she found the letter and she knows that Fosca was manipulating her, and Zoe is just a victim. Zoe reveals that Fosca didn't write the letter. Sebastian did. Part 6. Zoe says that she and Sebastian have been in love since she was a little girl, and he only married Mariana to get closer to her and for Mariana's money. That he, in fact, killed Mariana's father because he had caught them, Zoe and Sebastian, and had threatened to tell Mariana. Zoe says that Sebastian came up with this entire plan to ultimately kill Mariana so that he could get her money and be with Zoe. But then he drowned in Naxos, and Zoe blamed Mariana for his death and now wants to kill her for that and decided to complete his plan on her own. Sebastian's plan involved, okay, bear with me, killing some of the maidens and planting evidence like hair and blood in Fosca's rooms, and then getting Mariana, a group therapist, to investigate and convince her that it was Fosca who did it. Then killing Mariana and framing Fosca for that murder as well. By the way, the police have not yet found any of the evidence that Zoe planted. No, Zoe shook her head. You framed him, Mariana. Sebastian said all I had to do was make you think I was afraid of Fosca. You did the rest. That was the funniest part of this whole performance, watching you play detective. She smiled. You're not the detective. You're the victim. Page 361. And you'll be remembered as just another of Edward Fosca's victims. Victim number 4. No one will ever guess the truth. That we killed you. Sebastian and I. Page 362. Fred comes out of the trees and Zoe stabs him. While she's distracted by him, Mariana cracks her over the head with a rock and Zoe falls on her own knife. Both Zoe and Fred survive. Mariana visits Fred in the hospital and ponders if she dismissed him too quickly before, and maybe she could grow to love him. Zoe is deemed insane and unfit to stand trial and locked in an asylum. Her new psychiatrist contacts Mariana and asks her to come and see Zoe because it could help her heal. Zoe is beginning to open up more, and I'm deeply disturbed by the secret world she shared with your late husband. I'm hearing things that are truly frightening, and I must say, Mariana, I think you're extremely lucky to be alive. I know it's not easy, but all I ask is that you consider, on some level, that she's a victim too. Page 370. So she goes, of course, and Zoe's psychiatrist completely excuses Zoe's actions. He tried to kill you. She was merely his proxy, his puppet. She was entirely controlled by him. Page 371. Zoe might have been abused, but she is an adult now, and her abuser has been dead for over a year, long before she decided to actually kill anyone. The thread throughout this book of incredibly unhealthy psychological advice is maddening, but that's where it ends. Sebastian did it all through Zoe. So, I was right. Everyone automatically assumed the killer was a man, and so obviously it had to be a woman, and Zoe was the obvious candidate in that case. Now, I might be a little too sapphic-brained because I had assumed the solution was going to be that Zoe was in love with Tara, and that she was jealous of her sleeping with Fosca, and they fought. She had that whole quote about love being pointless, and I assumed it was because she had been cheated on. There was also her insistence that Tara wasn't actually dating Conrad. I also assumed that Elsie's weird obsession with Tara was going to come up again and was going to be a part of this weird emotional sexual tangle, but I guess not. I guess she was just a weird lady. Also, on things that didn't really go anywhere, Henry. So, like almost every other man she meets, he's obsessed with her. He stalks her. He presumably was the person that called her, threatened her, and trashed her room, even though that wasn't confirmed, but it doesn't make sense for anyone else to do it. And he gets one paragraph wrap-up on his story. He's arrested and locked up in a psych ward. Mariana blames herself for his actions, which is incredibly unhealthy for a mental health professional. She says she's going to talk to his doctor the next morning, but then Zoe almost killed her, and Henry is forgotten. Also, very offhand in the epilogue, we find out that Fosca was in fact sleeping with the Maidens that whole time. Morris was blackmailing him about this, and Fosca is fired. But it's very unclear how much of what was going on with the Maidens was actually happening and how much Zoe just made up to frame him. Did they actually take her to that temple? Did he actually drug her? Conrad did confirm that he had scored drugs for Fosca before, but if it had been GHB, a date rape drug, and not like weed, you would think he would have mentioned that. It's kind of an important distinction. Did they actually get naked in the woods and have an orgy, or did Zoe make all of that up to make him look worse? Were the rituals something he was actually doing, or did Zoe concoct it out of his interest to complicate the story and frame him? She obviously planted the pine cones, and she admits to underlining the particular passages in his books. It's never confirmed either way. Did she know that Mariana had a hang-up about Persephone and purposefully weave Persephone into this fake ritual? Or was Fosca actually performing rituals to Persephone and it was just a coincidence? None of that is ever clarified. So, the writing. In short, pretentious and obnoxious. The amount of times I rolled my eyes at the author trying to be smart or trying to make me think that a character was smart or intellectual or playing mind games, it was ridiculous. The author really wants the reader to think that Mariana is a really good therapist and can expertly read people, but the only sense I got from her is that there isn't much going on in her mind. Everywhere that there should have been an internal monologue about what Mariana was thinking, how she was reading someone, or what her strategy was to get information out of someone, there was nothing. She was silent externally and internally, and everyone just told her what she needed to know, often while complimenting her psychiatry powers. Also, every time she got pushback, every time someone tried to get under her skin, it worked. She was so fragile and she was rattled every time someone even accidentally mentioned one of her triggers, which might make sense if she was fully characterized as a mentally shattered widow still recovering, but the author also wants me to believe she's an expert therapist who is amazing at reading people. So which is it? Is she so broken that she can't handle any confrontation, or is she expertly playing mind games with everyone around her? Maybe a better author could have pulled off this dichotomy, but it doesn't work here. And can I touch on the ancient Greek again? I know I said it already, but it's so distracting. Judging by the author's name, they're Greek, so I'll assume it's not as distracting for them, but for someone who doesn't know any Greek, having blocks of Greek text in the middle of a page just takes me right out of it because I have to just skip over it. Especially with Clarissa, when it's a few Greek words in the middle of dialogue that my eyes just skip over. It interrupts the flow of reading and takes me right out of it. The problem is further exacerbated when the translation comes a few chapters after the initial text. So, the sexism. Almost every woman besides Mariana is either really annoying or downright mean, vapid, uncaring, and selfish. Clarissa is the only one who Mariana likes to any degree. This whole time I've assumed the author, Alex, was a man, but I haven't checked, so let's confirm my suspicions right now. Yep. Every man, besides Inspector Singa, for reasons I touched on, is immediately in love with Mariana and wants to sleep with her. Both Henry and Fred are absolutely obsessed with her, and she is really flattered in both cases. Despite Mariana believing for the entire book that Fosca is a murderer, when he asks her out for dinner after kissing her without consent, she agrees. Julian seems to be the only one who has a healthy crush on her, and she doesn't think twice about him, not even thinking about him when she wants someone at Cambridge to talk to. Though Mariana's daddy issues and her need for approval and to be loved is addressed, it's only addressed in relation to her obsession with Fosca, which is excused because it was completely manufactured by Zoe. It's never touched on when she continually makes excuses for Henry or when she ends up with Fred at the end. For a therapist, these are some incredibly unhealthy attachments. Speaking of terrible therapists, Zoe excuses her own actions, saying that it was Sebastian's plan all along and that this was all his fault as much as it was hers. And Zoe's therapist takes this side as well. Instead of trying to get her to work through her trauma and accepting her part in all of this and the decisions she made, she did murder 3 people, he says, well, she didn't really do it, did she? She was just a puppet, and Sebastian is the real killer. Even though he only killed Zoe's grandfather and was dead long before any of the girls died. Sure, that sounds so healthy. I think the choice to frame it this way by the narrative kinda goes back to the sexism. Even though Zoe is an adult woman whose abuser has been dead for over a year, she is not at all responsible for the 3 murders she committed. She's really only a little girl who could never have come up with and executed a plan like this on her own. It was the man who really did it. The atmosphere, or the attempted atmosphere. The book takes place at Cambridge, though halfway through I forgot which old English school it takes place at, and when I was editing my plot summary, I had to change a lot of references to Oxford. So it takes place at Cambridge. Some people smoke, and there is one scene where it's raining outside and the characters are sitting in plush chairs around a roaring fire. Clearly, this was an attempt at dark academia, and it really doesn't work. The only moments where it seems the author remembers that this book was supposed to be atmospheric is when Clarissa is in a scene. She smokes cigars, and Mariana is not like other girls because she likes the smell. And her office is described with lots of wood paneling and shelves full of books. And of course, she talks super pretentiously. But the rest of the time, the author seems to forget to describe much of anything, and the atmospheric setting is lost. And the themes. The themes aren't really there at all, but when they are suggested, they aren't working in service to the dark academia atmosphere, mostly because they all end up falling flat in the end. So it's mainly daddy issues and the unhealthy relationships people seek out as a result. As a theme for dark academia, it's not bad, and it could have worked if there was any attempt to bring it home at the end. But Zoe ends up locked in an institute, not getting very helpful psychological advice, and told to excuse all of her actions because of her childhood trauma. Very offhand, we're told that Fosca was fired. No follow-up on his victims at all. Mariana thought they were mean bitches, and that's the end of their stories. And Mariana herself ends up in a toxic codependent relationship without addressing her feelings about her previous toxic codependent relationship. Nothing learned at all by anyone, and in a dark academia book, you'd think someone would have learned something. Elsie. So, obviously the sapphic emotional sexual tangle that I'd made up in my head wasn't happening. So, what was with all of that? Did the author mean to do that? And if he did, why wasn't Elsie's situation ever resolved or brought up again? She's first presented as an obsessive stalker who has imagined that she has a much more intimate relationship with Tara than she actually did. She said she comforted Tara when she cried and would brush her hair, but Zoe tells us that Elsie is a psycho, and Tara actually banned her from her room. And then she only shows up again to tell Mariana that Serena was killed. We don't get any sort of wrap-up on her. I actually think she could have been a really good red herring. I think that at the end, instead of Mariana transferring her unhealthy attachment onto someone new, we could have seen Elsie transfer her unhealthy attachment onto someone new. You could even do that in the middle of the book and have Mariana suspect that she might kill her new obsession, but then have someone else die. Show that she isn't a killer, but that she does have a terrible habit of choosing students to obsess over because of her desire to feel needed. But we don't get that. Of course, because Mariana can never actually be wrong. In a book that wants to be about people taking advantage of their power over others and establishing unhealthy and abusive relationships, we get very little actual analysis regarding that. Elsie could have been another opportunity to show this abusive power dynamic, but I guess not. Fred. I have a lot of problems with Fred, and it starts with how he is immediately infantilized. He's a grown man working on his PhD, but he is almost a decade younger than Mariana, so at first she says he's too young for her. She thinks that he has a baby face, and he's just so adorably clumsy, and he is absolutely obsessed with her. She has conflicting thoughts about him. She sees him as a kid, but can't help but call him repeatedly. She feels like it would be betraying Sebastian to love anyone else, but Fred validates and strokes her ego in a way that she likes. We just didn't really need that. He could have been cute, clumsy, and a bit obsessed without Mariana focusing on how much younger he is than her. She didn't have to refer to him as a kid. After she turns him down, he follows her and immediately confesses his love and begs to marry her. Fred says his mom left him at a young age, and it's implied his dad was abusive. Mariana sees a picture showing he had a dog as a kid. When Mariana finds the final letter, we're meant to think that Fred wrote it because of a reference to a premonition. All of this leads the reader to think he's the killer, and so maybe he was only obsessed with Mariana because he was already obsessed with Zoe. But no, he just saw Mariana on the train and created an immediate unhealthy attachment to her, and in the end, Mariana gives in, and now they'll go on to have an extremely unhealthy, codependent relationship. Mariana ends up embodying that same abusive power dynamic that the book condemns. No lessons learned. Fred apparently never did anything wrong and is rewarded for his weird obsession. Fosca, the central red herring. The book opens by telling us he definitely did it, and so he obviously didn't. Now, that's not bad in and of itself. Your main character is allowed to be wrong sometimes. But there really is never a question about it. Every character tells her she's wrong. Even Zoe says she's kind of obsessed with him, when Zoe is supposedly the one gaslighting her into being obsessed with him. She never has anything that actually points to it being him, except for what Zoe says. There isn't even any hint that he's being inappropriate with his students. But of course he was. Mariana wasn't wrong about that. He was a creep, just not a murderer. I feel like him also being interested in Mariana kind of undermines that. If we saw that he was only interested in forming relationships with people that he had power over, that might have said something. But Mariana is an adult who lives on her own with her own career. The fact that he was interested in her at all, to me, pointed away from him being inappropriate with his students. But I guess he was just an overall creep who may or may not have been performing drug-induced initiation rituals with his students. Oh, and his mom also left him at a young age, and his father was abusive. How were there 3 characters in this story who all had the same childhood? I guess Henry was also supposed to be a red herring, but he was just stalking Mariana, and in the end she blames herself for what he did, and he's locked away, no longer a problem. I am confused about the timeline. Zoe is about 20, and Mariana is, I think, 36. Mariana met Sebastian when they were students at Cambridge, and they were married for 10 years. When I originally read Zoe's explanation, I assumed Sebastian met her first, and then contrived to meet and marry Mariana, but I think actually he organically met Mariana, and then met Zoe through her, and married Mariana to stay close to Zoe. And Zoe would have been at the most 9 years old at that time. I don't like that I have to speculate on that and that it's not made clear in the text. At some point, Zoe's parents died in a car crash, and Mariana and Sebastian take her in. After this, Sebastian is abusing and grooming Zoe in Mariana's house without Mariana noticing anything. Again, she's a therapist. And at some point, Sebastian kills Mariana's father without it being suspicious at all. I'm not sure if this was before or after Zoe's parents die, and it's not mentioned whether Zoe inherited any of the estate, but she's going to Cambridge and was invited to be one of the Maidens, who are all rich and privileged, so I guess she did? There really is a lot left up in the air about the events that happened before the story proper started, which isn't great when Zoe's motivations hinge on all of that. The plan. This plan was too complicated by half for what they wanted to accomplish, and relies on Mariana apparently acting way out of character, which of course she does. So let's see if I've got this. Because Sebastian was grooming Zoe, he married Mariana to get closer to her, and because Mariana's family, who is Zoe's family, has money. When Mariana's father, Zoe's grandfather, caught Sebastian and Zoe together, Sebastian killed him so that no one would find out. After he died, Mariana ended up inheriting a surprising amount of his estate. I also assume that at this point, Zoe's parents are also dead. So in order for them to be together and rich, Sebastian and Zoe just need to kill Mariana. But Sebastian says that they can't just outright kill her because it would be too obvious. They need something to distract from them. I guess at this point Zoe is also already at Cambridge because she tells Sebastian about the Maidens and Sebastian comes up with the plan. They are going to kill some of the Maidens who are wholly unrelated to them and innocent in this situation. They are going to convince Mariana, a group therapist and very timid person, to investigate. They plant evidence to frame Fosca for the murders and gaslight Mariana into thinking he did it. They then kill Mariana, and the police will obviously think that Fosca killed her because she was getting too close to the truth. Then they live happily ever after with her money. The plan goes wrong before it even starts because Sebastian drowns accidentally. This should mean that the plan is off because being with Sebastian was the whole point for Zoe. But Zoe blames Mariana for his death, which makes her want to kill Mariana even more. I guess she would also inherit the money, being the only family member left alive, but it's not a stated motive, so she goes forward with Sebastian's plan. We are never told how Zoe lured those girls out in the middle of the night and overpowered them to slit their throats. I guess Tara wouldn't have been that hard because they were friends, but Veronica and Serena were not her friends, so why would they meet her in the middle of the night? Also, with Tara, we're told that Elsie saw her leave her room, and that 15 minutes later, Morris saw her leave the gate, a walk that should have only taken 2 to 3 minutes. This is never explained. Did she stop somewhere? Was Elsie and or Morris lying? Don't know. Most classic murder mysteries have a denouement where the detective explains everything they've uncovered and what actually happened. We don't get that here, mostly because Mariana didn't uncover anything. Zoe just says she did it and why, but we never get the how. And I feel like the how is important here. It's where a lot of the satisfaction of a murder mystery comes from. Mariana doesn't even know about Sebastian's abusive childhood. She doesn't read the journal entries that the reader does. She gets even fewer answers than we do. So what did Mariana do? What did she learn? How did she grow? As the main character, she should have gone through some sort of arc, but I'm struggling to come up with any actions that she took to further the plot, or any information that she uncovered to solve the central mystery. People just tell her when someone dies. Everything she finds has actually been planted by Zoe. The postcards, the pine cones, every connection to Fosca's interests, and she doesn't even find everything. Zoe has to tell her that she planted DNA evidence, Tara's blood and hair, in Fosca's rooms. Apparently for no reason, because Mariana never got that far. She doesn't have any suspicions about Sebastian at all until Zoe straight up tells her that he was grooming her the whole time. As far as I can remember, there were absolutely no hints that there was something going on with Sebastian, and I think there really should have been. I think there should have been some clue to the reader, some red flag behaviors from either or both Sebastian or Zoe that Mariana was excusing or dismissing. Often abuse is happening right under our noses, and because we don't want to ever believe that someone we know, someone we love, could be capable of that, we end up dismissing the red flags to preserve our vision of them while sacrificing their victims. There's one of your themes! Zoe even says that not only does she blame Mariana for killing Sebastian, she also killed her when he died. I think it might have been better if someone had pointed out that Mariana had actually sacrificed Zoe's childhood in order to preserve the perfect image that she had of her husband. Having her be completely in the dark about this stuff until the final reveal falls really flat. And Mariana is never wrong about anything. She makes some wild assumptions, and every time she's proven to be right. She assumes Fosca is sleeping with his students with very little prompting, and she's right. Hours after she starts investigating, she assumes the killer had an abusive childhood and puts on a charming facade. And according to the narrative that says Sebastian was the real killer, she's right. She never thinks that Fred or Henry or Elsie could have been the killer. All of that is left up to the reader to speculate about. The only thing she is ever wrong about is that Fosca is the killer, and that's only because it's the central premise, and she needs to be wrong about that for the story to happen. But the author can't even really let her be wrong about that, because literally everyone tells her that she's wrong. Even Zoe, who is supposedly trying to get her to think that he did it, tells her that she's a bit too obsessed with him. The author tells us over and over again that she's wrong about this. There is never any real doubt about what's happening. From the beginning, Fosca obviously didn't do it, and Mariana has no other suspects until Zoe flat out tells her that she did it. I just want to tell the author that it's okay for your characters to be wrong sometimes, and in a mystery, it might be beneficial for your reader to have some doubts about the factual events of the story. There's this running thread about Mariana's daddy issues. Her father was very absent, and Ruth, her supervisor/therapist, tells her that she felt the need to please him because she didn't get the love she craved. We are told that she used to praise her father to Ruth. She used to think he was a great father until Ruth pointed out that she was only doing this because she wanted his validation. We are told that she's moved on from that, and her need for approval that continues until the end of the book is never addressed. Mariana points out at one point that some people take advantage of others' need for love and validation. She says this, pointing the finger at Fosca, but she never realizes that she is also still seeking love and validation in others to an unhealthy degree. She says she only felt beautiful because Sebastian thought she was. She only felt fulfilled with him because he validated her. So the book should have ended with her finding worth in herself, but instead she gets with Fred, who is entirely obsessed with her, calling her beautiful, begging to marry her, giving her the love and validation that she has craved from the start. She hasn't grown at all, just found a new person to attach her self-worth to. Thanks for watching.